Welcome back to another AFC North update. This one after week 11 of the NFL season, and it was an all-divisional matchup for the AFC North in week 11. The Ravens played the Bengals, the Steelers played the Browns, and we finally have some movement in the standings. This is the first time the standings haven't been Ravens, Steelers, Browns, Bengals since after week 5. And it's the first time that the Ravens and the Steelers haven't occupied the top two spots since after week 1. So we're going to be running down each of them from top to bottom, starting with the still division leading Baltimore Ravens, 8-3 overall, now 3-2 in the division. They beat the Bengals on Thursday Night Football last week, final score of 34-20, although that's a game that has much worse implications than Cincinnati than it does positive ones for Baltimore, in my opinion. But we'll talk about it from the Ravens' perspective here while we're still talking about Baltimore. They washed a taste out of their mouth from that bad loss against Cleveland early on Thursday. They survived their own quarterback injury scare, as Lamar Jackson does seem to be okay. It was kind of Ravens fans definitely fearing for the worst there, but they don't escape this game unscathed. However, Mark Andrews might be out for the year. It definitely seemed like that was the case once the game ended. Fairly big blow considering his chemistry with Lamar Jackson. Although the Ravens investing in their wide receiver room, that should certainly give them a better chance of absorbing this hit now than they would have had last year of taking this hit. Although John Harbaugh, he did say that it might not have been as bad as initially feared, and there's an outside chance that he could play again this season, which maybe he doesn't play in the regular season, but that does make it seem like he could definitely be ready to go by the time the playoffs get rolling, especially if the Ravens are able to continue winning and clinch that number 1 seed. As right now, the Ravens are the top seed in the AFC, 8 wins right now being the highest out of any AFC team. We'll see if that holds after they have a bye week, but that's going to be after they play the Chargers on Sunday Night Football this week. And if that defense can limit the Chargers offense, it shouldn't be too difficult of a win for Baltimore. LA is one of those teams that is really designed to win shootouts where their offense is very dynamic. You have Justin Herbert there with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Austin Eckler being in there, but honestly, that defense, though, really not the like a paper-thin defense, very a Swiss cheese-like defense. So if you can limit the offense, the defense shouldn't be that difficult to move the ball on, even without Mark Andrews in the lineup. You know, losing him is definitely tough, but they still have a very encouraging path in front of them, at least for me. And then you have some movement in the standings. The now second place Cleveland Browns, 7-3 overall, now 3-2 in the division as well. They won a 13-10 game over the Steelers on Sunday, on a last-second field goal from Justin Hopkins. I talked about that game on Sunday after it first happened. It was the second start and first win for rookie quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who definitely looked much better in this outing against Pittsburgh than he did against Baltimore earlier in the year. Although DTR definitely had some more time to prepare, and the coaching staff had some more time to get ready for what they wanted to do with him. And it definitely seemed like the game plan was to get the ball out very fast in order to prevent him from getting sacked. They were dealing with backup offensive tackles in that game as well. DeWan Jones was really great when he played. He was very clearly on a snap count, but when he was in there, definitely very effective at limiting TJ Watt, what he does. But that game plan does really limit what DTR could do in terms of trying to drive the ball down the field and really get some deep passes going. It was a lot of checkdowns, a lot of short out routes, and once the Steelers caught on to that in the second half of the game, they realized that they could start jumping those routes a little bit, or at least anticipating them, and really start stacking the box and making life difficult on that Browns offense. But DTR, he did show off his legs a little bit. Can't imagine that the Browns coaching staff wants him to run the ball very much, considering they also had their starting quarterback knocked out for the season last week. But the Browns defense continues to just be really solid. They held the fort down while the offense sputtered in the second half. Myles Garrett making some impact plays again. Agbo Okoronkwo had a great game after becoming a father last week before the game against Pittsburgh. So that the defense continues to roll on. But Dustin Hopkins, he made a game-winning field goal again. Like I said, I haven't felt this comfortable about a Browns kicker in a season since Phil Dawson was still on the team. That's how good of a season I think that Dustin Hopkins is having. He's been well worth the 7th round pick that the Browns traded to the Chargers to get him. The Browns, they've signed a Joe Flacco to the practice squad after the game. You do have to have an emergency quarterback ready, and if Dorian Thompson-Robinson is going to be like legitimately the guy they use moving forward, having Flacco to mentor DTR it's not the worst thing in the world to have as an insurance policy, and it's just a mentor as the Browns get ready for what they hope to be a playoff berth. But Cleveland they also lose a player for the season in their game. It was safety Rodney McLeod. They lose him to a bicep injury. He was starting in the game because Juan Thornhill wasn't ready to go, so the Browns were down to their fourth safety in Ronnie Hickman in their last game. Anthony Walker also left the game against Pittsburgh early and is considered week to week. Maybe his relationship with Darius Leonard could help him get to Cleveland if Darius Leonard does indeed clear waivers. I'm not quite sure how much validity there is to that besides just, well, the Browns kind of need a linebacker as Anthony Walker's hurt right now, so maybe they'll grab Darius Leonard. Again, don't know if that'll go anywhere, but I'm trying to speak it into existence here. But the Browns' ceiling for this season overall definitely hampered by Watson having his injury. I think we're going to need to see more growth from DTR in order to restore some true excitement about the season overall, although that final drive was definitely a nice sign for DTR. We'll see if the Browns let him loose a little bit more against Denver, although the Broncos defense has been putting up a lot better efforts over the past few weeks. They've been definitely improving under Vance Joseph, putting the clamps down. So we'll see how DTR reacts to playing some tough defenses in his first couple weeks as becoming the true long-term starter for this season for the Browns. But then you get the Steelers, who are now 6-4, now 2-1 in the division. So now every team has at least one divisional loss. And they were obviously on the flip side of that 13-10 game where the Steelers offense just invisible yet again. And so, of course, same old, same old. They just fire Matt Canada in the middle of the season. Wait a minute. The Pittsburgh Steelers fired Matt Canada in the middle of the season. Well, I guess Steelers fans can rejoice, at least for now anyway, until they see Kenny Pickett at quarterback. But even with that, even with Kenny Pickett not looking his best, there is some hope that new faces on the offensive coordinator side are taking over play calling duties. There is hope that can spark some consistency with Kenny Pickett, a little bit more of what we saw from him in his rookie season. And not that his rookie season was lighting the world on fire or anything, but he was definitely a lot better with the ball, and he seemed to have regressed from his rookie season to now. Running backs coach Eddie Faulkner takes over as the offensive coordinator for now, while quarterback coach Mike Sullivan is expected to call the plays. Whatever the situation is, no matter who's doing what, it can't be worse than whatever Matt Canada had going on for the Steelers in the last couple of years. But back to Kenny Pickett, Matt Canada being gone should help things somewhat, but to put some responsibility on just the player for a minute, there were definitely throws that were there that he either just didn't see or wasn't able to make in that game against Cleveland, and that's been going on really all year. And that can be forgiven when you make up for it in the fourth quarter on the final drive, when all of a sudden you somehow just start playing well in clutch moments. But that didn't happen against Cleveland. Only one real drive for the Steelers that resulted in scoring, which was the field goal to tie it at 10 in the second half. Remember, their first 7 points came off of just a long Jaylen Warren touchdown run. By the way, Jaylen Warren should definitely take over the lead back duties. I don't think Najee Harris has been all that bad or anything. I just think Jaylen Warren has just been that good to where I do think he has earned that role of becoming more of the workhorse back for the Steelers, using that speed to make plays in space and really just outrunning guys. We saw Jaylen Warren do that a couple times against the Browns, not just on that touchdown run, but turning some screens into first downs on long third downs. And when you have Deontay Johnson throwing a fit and needing to be physically moved away from coaches due to frustration, something has to give. And in this case, it was Matt Canada's job. Certainly as a Browns fan, I'll miss him. But yeah, he sucked at his job, and he needed to go from that Steelers organization if they want any hope of reaching any sort of heights for this season. But if the offense could support the defense a little bit, then Pittsburgh could be cooking with gas here a little bit, and maybe firing Matt Canada lights the burner for that Pittsburgh team. We'll see how that goes when they take on the Bengals this Sunday. And speaking of the Bengals, they are still last in the division, falling to 5-5 overall, 0-3 in the division. As mentioned earlier, they lost to the Ravens on Thursday Night Football. However, the biggest loss was losing quarterback Joe Burrow out with a torn ligament in his wrist. So now it is the Jake Browning show in Cincy. Look, it was already going to be a little bit of an uphill battle for the Bengals to get into the playoffs from 5-5. Very doable, though, and still technically is. It's just that, man, that offense is going to be losing 2 or 3 gears with Jake Browning in there instead of Joe Burrow that's at full go. And the defense, which has been solid all year for Cincinnati, they really need to step up now and probably will need to keep them in games, kind of like what's been going on with Cleveland and Pittsburgh all year, except that might even be tougher now that Cam Taylor-Britt is considered day-to-day, and it's going to be a toss-up whether or not he will play against the Steelers right now. We'll see what Jake Browning can do against this tough Steelers defense. I do think he'll have a chance to make this one interesting, as I don't necessarily know how much of an instant fix to the offense just losing Matt Canada will be. I still feel like there's definitely still some dysfunction that they'll still have to work through and get past. So I could very easily see this game becoming a defensive battle, just another typical ugly AFC North kind of game that we saw Pittsburgh and Cleveland play last week. And Jake Browning could have an opportunity to be a late game hero, kind of like DTR was. But if the Bengals lose, that will make an already very iffy playoff berth scenario just look all that much more bleaker. Again, they're not technically out of it yet, but if they look dead against the Steelers and they fall back to below 500, they're definitely going to have to get some pretty big wins against some really tough teams remaining on their schedule. And that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you didn't make it this far into it, leave a like and a subscribe if you enjoyed it and you'd like to see more like it. You can let me know what you think about how the AFC North action played out last week and how it'll get either better or worse for these teams next week. But once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you at the next one.